real change will only come to developing nations when the people of those nations actually want to see change enacted in their everyday lives. Robert Mugabe was re-elected partly down to the electoral fraud that he instigated, but also because the people of that nation don't want to see change enough. If they did, we would have seen real change in that nation and countless others all across the globe by now.
Change can normally happen by voting. According to the BBC, just under 1 million people were rejected from the voting polls. Surely, and that's an official fact, so surely if they've been rejected, they want change, but it just hasn't been able to happen.
Okay, good point. 1 million people rejected from voting. What did they do about it? That's 1 million people. Why didn't they gather, collect themselves, protest, beat down the doors of democracy, the pseudo-democracy? I don't like the way that they're running that country just as much as the next man. But you've got to ask those 1 million people, did you just go home that night? Because if you did, you're part of the problem.
But then you've got to think about the resources available to them to make that change. You look at the Middle East and all these different uprisings that are happening. Zimbabwe does not have the same resources that are available to all these other nations, and therefore how can they just pick up pitchforks and just go at the democracy, or the walls of democracy as you call it? This is where other nations have the opportunity to step in.
Again, good point. The argument I'd make back to that is that, yeah, they might not have certain resources, but you just gave the answer yourself. They got pitchforks, pick up the pitchforks and go fight against your government. I do understand, I do sympathise with them, that it is difficult going up against the government that has so much resource and has so much money and power, but you've got to think back to the way that the rest of the world found its democracy, and it was sometimes with pitchforks. And yes, thousands, tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands will die trying to find that democracy and freedom, but it'll make the rest of the world stand up and say, okay, we're not going to let them go down like this, we're going to go out fighting with them.
And I completely agree, and that's where, Zimbabwe might be at that point now where someone can grab a pitchfork and just that one person, like you said. But you've got to think about Robert Mugabe's been in power for just under 37 years. That's a whole generation of people that have been living under that sort of thumb, I guess. So maybe you're right, maybe we're at that stage where now other nations can intervene and empower those individuals.